Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sherman, and I'm here today interviewing with RJ Lytle right here, and we're in the genealogy room in the Frontenac Museum. We're going to be talking about the book that he's writing on about his family and what he's been doing with that, the history of his family and growing up and visiting.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for your introduction. I basically grew up in Long Island, but my family, the Lytle family, has been here in Springport for 200 years now. My triple great-grandfather, Josiah Lytle, came here in 1829 as a stonemason. I grew up in Long Island myself. My father was from Cayuga Village. My mother was from New York City. So they compromised, and I grew up in the suburbs of Long Island, where I went to high school, college, and whatnot. I'm up here right now researching in the final stages of my family history as it relates to Cayuga County. And I'm putting this all together in a book, which is at the publishers right now. I'm certain it'll take at least three months for production. The book's titled Lytle Family Chronologue, 1795 to 2022. Now, I've continuously had relatives in this area since 1829. And unfortunately, I lost a cousin last week, Robert W. Lytle, old age, health. And so I'm looking to preserve the Lytle tradition here in this community. And in the backdrop of it, of course, includes the history of Cayuga Village, Union Springs Village, and in general, Cayuga County.
So you had family that grew up around here?
Yes. When I was a young child, we used to come up here to visit my grandmother that lived in Auburn. If you look behind me here in the Lytle exhibit, there's a picture of my grandmother at the age of 18, Leona, and the other picture is with her husband, Stan Lytle, from Cayuga Village. They met in World War I. He's wearing his World War I uniform there. And there's a bunch of other pictures and things that I've donated to the museum for the Lytle family exhibit. This was coordinated through Pat Kimber and some of the other staff members here. But none of these people were generals, politicians, doctors, lawyers, or anything like this, but they were hardworking people that helped build this community. My triple great-grandfather was a stonemason. I'm quite certain when you look at the history of this community and you look at the edifice of stone, he clearly had his hand in this community. So he's here, so to speak, in his contributions to the community. My double great-grandfather worked in the mill. He was a miller. So that big stone factory down by the pond down there, I'll bet he worked there, as a miller in his younger years, and later he worked as a farm laborer. And then on, as technology developed in this county as well as the United States, my great-grandfather, Frank Lytle, moved to Auburn because that's where the jobs were in the city areas now as this area started to industrialize in the late 1800s. His son, Stan, the guy in the World War I uniform behind me, he lived and worked here. He worked in one of the quarries for a while. He drove a truck delivering bread. So they evolved as the technology and the history of this community moved on. They were a part of it. In World War II, my uncle Earl, my uncle Stan, and my father, Robert M. Lytle, joined the services. Robert M. was in the Navy, Stan was in the Army, and Earl was in the Navy. Earl served in Sampson Base, where he passed away because of a medical complication. Stan served in Burma and China, and my father, Robert M., served in North Africa, Southern Europe, England, and ultimately was at the invasion of Normandy.
Wow. For
the big invasion there at Utah Beach as part of the American landing forces. So each one of these people have been involved with the history. The backdrop of the history is that of America. The backdrop is the Springport community and their personal life and how they were involved in it and how they gave to this community. I too am trying to give to this community through this tape, through the book I'm publishing very shortly. The draft is at the publisher, and now we're waiting, for them to produce it over the next 3 to 5 months. That's what it's about.
It's very interesting hearing about your family and how they were involved with the military. My grandfather and my uncle and my dad's brother, my other uncle, they were also in the military, so I
Very
always,
good.
you
So
know.
you understand
So
it.
and I always enjoy, hearing people's stories with that
Right.
as well.
Great.
And you were also in the military?
I had 2 careers. It's almost like walking in 2 worlds.
Yeah.
One was military. I served 35 years active duty in reserves. And then also I was in public education where I served as a teacher, a principal, and an assistant superintendent. I'm retired now. I live in North Carolina. I have a comfortable home down there, and I like the pace of life. This is a wonderful community here.
Yeah.
But I've been spoiled by the mild winters down south.
Yeah.
Your cold winters up here are something. I've lived upstate New York when I was a middle school principal in Lewis County, but I've had enough snow. I prefer warm weather myself.
Yeah. Same. I also like warmer weather, but you're back here for the summer for writing your book and finding information about your family.
Correct.
And how has that been? Has it been productive? Have you enjoyed being back and learning?
Being here for the last 2 months has been outstanding. Through the museum and through the good people here, I've been able to meet different people, working as a docent, helping, with the tour guides, answering their questions, getting to know the volunteers here too, when we've, shared tours on Saturday and Sunday, open exhibits. That's given me insights, it's given me thoughts, it's given me a chance to get to know this community.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up here.
No.
I came here. My family's roots are from here. My family's origins are from here, at least over the last 200 years. But I was in other places, partially because of my military career, which took me elsewhere, and my education career as an administrator.
So can you share with us some of the items that you've donated to the museum?
Yes, as I said, that's my grandma Leona from Indiana initially, but she lived here in Cayuga Village in Auburn most of her life. This is my grandma Lytle and her husband Stan Lytle from Cayuga Village, where he grew up. This was my great-grandfather's saw. This toy chest was made by my grandfather for me when I was a child. There's still a lot of pictures to be hung up and things to be displayed.
Oh, that's very nice. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I put some tags on a lot of the things when I've had the chance to identify its origins. But this was made by my grandfather for me when I was a child. This is simply a typewriter my mother used in college. This was my grandfather's fishing kit. And anybody who fishes can appreciate it. A lot of this stuff has been moved out of here, and it's currently on exhibit. In the other room, you have the fishing exhibit, and from what I've heard, we're going to film that too.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's
that's it
go
for
over
now.
there then.
Okay, Elizabeth, we're here in the schoolroom at the Frontenac Museum now, where we have on display some of the equipment that my grandfather used when he was fishing. He taught me how to fish as a young child. And as you can see up here on the top, get up here, this is a picture of me at Cayuga Lake when I was 3 years old. We went out with a friend of my father's on his rowing boat, and I can vaguely remember the house. I have the vaguest memories of that. So yes, I've been a member of this community as a visitor, but not as a permanent resident. If you look at some of the lures and things like this on the table here, these were all my grandfather's. He was a very dedicated fisherman. He was very thorough about what he did and what he believed in. The old wrapping fish line here, one of the tools that he used for removal of hooks, multi-use device. Now, what intrigues me are these lead weights. My grandfather was a craftsman. He was a machine shop teacher in New York City. And he would cast these weights. These are his. He would take the lead, he would melt it down, he would put it in form and use it for fishing, sometimes in salt water.
Oh, that's neat.
So that's basically what I have here. I'm not familiar with the lures and the ducks. I'm not a hunter.
Yeah.
But this is part of the display, and as you can see, the different lures that he had when he worked. Fishing was his passion. His name was Frank Svoboda. He was my mother's father. He was from New York City, as my mother was. And this passion for fishing came over to me, and as you can see from that picture up there, one of my earliest fishing experiences was right here in Lake Cayuga, when we came up to visit Grandma Lytle in Auburn.
Yeah, I also have a thing for fishing too. For Father's Days, my dad would take me on to Cayuga Lake, and we would go fishing together. So it's a little thing to do.
It's a wonderful memory. It's a hobby for a lifetime.
Yeah. It's been, very nice looking at all your different things that you've donated.
Thank you.
And I especially love the fishing lures.
Well, I'm hoping that the museum will preserve the Lytle family collection as a family of this community with the theme of over multiple generations.
Yeah.
A little bit about their lives. We have different departments of how a school was run in the 1800s, or how a store was run in the 1800s, or the spectrum of the military and those who served from Cayuga in these various rooms here. But I'm trying to highlight a specific family, my relatives.
Yeah.
And I look forward to that preservation. Now, when the book comes out, I will be donating a copy to the museum, and I'm not doing it for publication in terms of any monetary gain. Actually, I'm running at a loss. But the idea is to preserve our history and make it known to those that are interested in it.
And it's always very important,
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. In our discussion out in the hall, we talked about the idea that my great-great-grandfather, John Lytle, was a lifelong resident of Union Springs. He lived up on Scobie Street. And these were poor people. I mean, they really poor people. He had 10 children. And he and his wife were members of the Catholic Church, now the VFW Hall. And if you go up Scobie Street to the very end, the last house on your right, that's where he lived. They bought the house about 1890. In their later years, he was about age 60 when he bought the house. He lived there until his death in 1912. And then his wife later on sold the house. But they were members of the Catholic Church, and there's an interesting story that I found in my research that talked about John Lytle putting on a dinner, facilitating a dinner at the church. I guess it was for fundraising. And it said, and the author of this article said, when John Lytle does something, you know it's done right. So that gave me a personal insight into what that man was like. Something you don't get from statistics, you don't get from legal documents. It's something personal about his life, that he really supported the church. His wife was Irish Catholic, so she was very strong in her beliefs, her religious beliefs, and encouraged him to participate in the church. The Lytle family are basically of Scottish origin, and they have a long history going back into the Middle Ages. We have a family motto that says "Concito nulli," which means yield nothing. And they were warriors at the border region between Scotland and Britain. But that same fortitude came over here with the residents of Union Springs. And it was to be workers, to be hard workers, to be dedicated workers. And John, employed those skills just by this simple dinner at the church.